He was true in the beginning. He was true when the ages commenced and has been true. He is also true now. Guru Nanak says that he will certainly be true in future as well. While these immortal words from the Gurbani sound magical anywhere, here in this vast expanse of a cold desert, thousands of feet above the sea, amidst the starkness of the landscape, in the warmth of a Gurdwara, their essence somehow becomes crystal clear. This tiny Gurdwara, Gurdwara Shri Patthar Sahib Ji, is situated on the Srinagar-Leh road, just 25 kilometers short of Leh. It may not match the grandeur of the other better-known Gurdwaras, but not only did Guru Nanak Dev live and meditate here, he also fought a demon.
1517 ਈਸਵੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿੱਬਤ, ਨੇਪਾਲ, ਸਿੱਕਮ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਝਾਰਖੰਡ ਦੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਲੇਹ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਨੇ। ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨ ਤਪੱਸਿਆ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਆਰੰਭ ਕੀਤਾ, ਬਾਲਾ ਤੇ ਮਰਦਾਨਾ ਨਾਲ ਸੀ, ਲੋਕ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਇਕੱਤਰਤ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਧੂ ਮਹਾਤਮਾ ਕੋਈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਜਿਸ ਇਲਾਕੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਹੀ ਪਹਿਰਾਵਾ ਪਹਿਨਦੇ ਸੀ। ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਪਹਾੜੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਡੇਂਜਰ ਰਾਕਸ਼ਸ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਟਰਨ ਵਾਈਜ਼ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਖਾਂਦਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਪਰੇਸ਼ਾਨ ਹਾਂ। ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਰਾਕਸ਼ਸ ਦੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਇਸ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ 'ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹਾਂ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ 'ਤੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹਾਂ। ਤਾਂ ਰਾਕਸ਼ਸ ਨੇ ਸੋਚਿਆ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰੀ ਤਰਫ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਰ ਦਿੰਦਾ। ਵੱਡਾ ਪੱਥਰ ਉਹਨੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਸੁੱਟਿਆ। ਪੱਥਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਬੋਡੀ ਨਾਲ ਟੱਚ ਹੋਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੋਮ ਬਣ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਸੀ। ਮੋਮ ਬਣ ਕੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਪਿੱਠ ਲੱਗੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਪੱਥਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਪੱਥਰ ਪਿੱਠ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ।
Guru Lama, Nanak Lama and Guru Rinpoche were the names given to him by the locals during his stay, and till today they revere him as their own.
Guru Rinpoche ne zuga ana shore ina shore ipajas kya hoya?
हाँ जी, सब मानते हैं। लामा गुरु बोलते जी।
Nearly all who travel this road stop a while at Gurudwara Patthar Sahib. The devout to pay obeisance, the curious to know more about this quaint place of pilgrimage, and the hungry to enjoy piping hot langar, a meal from the community kitchen available at any time of the day. All thanks to the Indian Army who manage Gurdwara Patthar Sahib, so that those who come seeking the Guru Lama's divine presence return touched by it again and yet again.
Eons ago, maybe in myth, maybe in reality, Raja Jambu Lochan was out hunting when somewhere in a forest he came across a tiger and a goat side by side, drinking water from a stream. He immediately decided to build a city on such hallowed soil, and thus was born the city of Jammu. But then perhaps, maybe this myth, legend or story has some element of truth in it. And that is why, in present times when strife and religious intolerance are the order of the day, in this city of Jammu, mosques and temples do exist side by side. Jammu is known for being the city of temples, but it is also home to shrines hundreds of years old, known as ziyarats or dargahs. At any given time, and especially on a Thursday, Hindus and Sikhs far outnumber Muslims at these shrines and firmly believe it is the presence of these shrines which protects their city from all harm. All are welcome here. And all are equal. And each one prays in their own way. Not even for a moment does the presence of one threaten or antagonize the other. These ziyarats of Jammu are a perfect example of our religious and cultural syncretism. Red and green, two distinct colors representing two distinct faiths, Hinduism and Islam. But here in these ziyarats of Jammu, they come together, not in acrimony, but in perfect harmony.
Towards the end of the 8th century AD, a young boy was growing up in the rice fields of Kerala. Except, unlike other boys of his age, he was deeply immersed in the study of the Vedas. By the tender age of 12, he had internalized the core teaching of Advaita, non-duality, of absolute monoism, one simple reality, one truth, one God, and was now the Adi Shankaracharya. Having fully experienced his spiritual heritage through a deep study of the scriptures, he proceeded to further experience this heritage by physically visiting the great places of learning and holy tirthas, by crisscrossing the country on foot. His journey began up north, in the mighty Himalayas, the abode of the gods. The Adi Shankaracharya is said to have visited Kashmir many times. He first visited this Shiva temple, which was said to be as old as time itself. While no exact date has been identified, the original structure is said to have been built around 220 BC, with many an alteration and addition at later dates. What is, however, unique about this temple is its architecture. When observed from a distance, the temple looks like a huge shivling, reaching out to the sky, almost touching the clouds. Inside it also is an enormous shivling, which is touched by the first rays of the sun as it rises each morning. It is here, in these tranquil and beautiful surroundings, that the Adi Shankaracharya lived and meditated in perfect harmony with his surroundings. This tiny cave, a little below the temple, was his humble abode. Though it was a brief association, it was strong enough for the temple to be known by his name ever since. For perhaps it was here that he fully experienced the depths of monoism, both within and without. In these times of strife, when differences between people, their thoughts and beliefs, are explained in terms of a clash between civilizations, it is difficult to believe that not so long ago lived a man many believed to be divine, who had the ability to effortlessly bridge this gap between seemingly different streams of belief. Nand Rishi, Sheikh Nuru-uddin, Nand Rishi, Sheikh Alam, as many names perhaps as followers, was born in Jammu in 1375 AD in Kashmir. This spring is where he first bathed. This cave, where he meditated for 12 long years. He emerged having immersed himself in the divine, but still a son of the soil who spoke to the people in their own language, using metaphors they could identify with. He said, "Let the plowshare be your bath and ablutions. Perform them well. The yoke be thy conscience. Abandon worry of kith and kin." Telling the land is equal to reading the Quran, read it correctly. For essentially, Nand Rishi was a people's saint, an icon both for the new faith Islam, which was taking root, and also for the soil in which it was taking root, which carried within it centuries of wisdom and spirituality of the pre-existing religion, Hinduism. He enshrined within himself, as a living example, the best of both for his followers to follow, ensuring there was no clash or collision between the two, and also a continuance of the Kashmiri way of life. He said, "Once you know the truth, then you will curb the five senses. Otherwise, you may continue to bend your body 5 times and call it namaz. But only when you have united Shiva and the void within you will you have offered the true and inner namaz." Like all great Bhakti and Sufi saints preaching unity with the divine, harmony and equality across India at that time, Nand Rishi also epitomized the spirit of oneness as he preached against dogma, ritual and hatred in the name of religion. He spent his last days at Roopwan, an idyllic spot on top of a hill, till his mortal remains were laid to rest at Charar-e-Sharif. As in life, so also in death, he remained the people's saint. Irrespective of religion, till today, Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs pray to him as their very own. Just as he had taught them that love is the only ladder which can take them to God.
Saidan Valley and Chamlial were twin villages with common trees, crops, birds, and even a common saint, Dalip Singh Manhas. Dalip Singh Ji had a large following in the area, and though a Hindu, Muslims far outnumbered Hindus and Sikhs as his disciples. Legend further says that one day Dalip Singh Ji was assaulted and beheaded. His head was buried at Chamlial and body at Saidan Valley village. The twin villages now even had twin shrines, both of their beloved saint. Except over time, Chamlial became a little more important because, as Babaji told one of his followers in a dream, the soil shakar and the water sharbat could cure all and any skin ailment. Chamlial's fame spread, and sufferers came from far and near in search of a cure. Nothing changed for 300 years. Every second Thursday in the month of Ashad, both villages celebrated a mela together in memory of their saint. But then, partition came, and the twin villages suddenly had a border in between. Saidan Valley found itself in Pakistan, and Chamlial became a part of India. For the followers of Baba Dalip Singh Ji, it seemed like their Baba's body had been severed once again from its head. Things worsened with time.
अभी तो बिल्कुल ऐसे बहुत ही दूर हो गए हैं, इतने के भी ऐसे भी ज़्यादा.
Guns and artillery drowned the joyous sounds of drums. From where had come flowers and chadars to pay obeisance came indiscriminate firing, hurting both the shrine and the spirit of Baba Chamlial.
उनकी जो फायरिंग है पाकिस्तान की बहुत ज़बरदस्त आती थी. जब हम खेती करते थे तो वो हमारे ऊपर गोलियों की बौछार कर देते थे.
But this year, after a long time, India's peace overtures bore fruit. After great persuasion, the Pakistani Rangers accepted the Indian Border Security Force's invitation to participate in the Mela. On June 24th, the second Thursday in the month of Ashad, once again, the guns fell silent and the drums took over. A group of Pakistani Rangers, their families, and a few local representatives from Saidan Valley came with a chadar and flowers as offerings for Baba Chamlial. Tankers containing shakkar soil and sharbat water were sent as prasad from the Indian side. A multitude of humanity on both sides tried hard to catch a glimpse of the other, a neighbor so near, yet so far. Baba Chamlial's Mela was once again a joyous occasion, as his disciples on both sides fleetingly forgot differences to celebrate together, with reverence and love, in peace once again. Indians seldom pray in silence or alone. They love to pray together and ensure that their prayers are being heard. For across India, communion with God is a joyous celebration of life. Chanting and singing are an inherent and integral part of all indigenous faiths. And even religions, which came from afar and took root in the Indian soil, soon evolved and adapted to this social milieu, internalizing existing idioms and practices. You can see this in Jammu and Kashmir as well. While the monasteries in Ladakh resound with chants and symbols, the ziyarats and temples of the valley and Jammu have their own code of rituals, which perhaps have more in common to each other than in other parts of the country, because Islam did not arrive with the sword here, but it came like a gentle breeze, slowly turning the temples into kanikas. As wise men and philosophers fleeing their own countries in Central Asia because of religious persecution reached Kashmir seeking refuge, they felt safe in their adopted land and began to preach their faith. In Khanikas and the Ziyarats, they spoke of one God, of one truth, love for fellow beings, of humility and truthfulness. This, to the locals, sounded not new, but familiar, not different, but akin to the basic tenets of their own faith of monoistic Shaivism. Thus soon, the new faith took root as it adapted to its new followers' age-old beliefs. In fact, a contract was signed to safeguard these beliefs, the original of which lies in a deep vault inside the old Khanika in Srinagar. Amongst other things, the contract specifies permission to continue to chant the Lord's name aloud and together. And so, till today in Kashmir, Darood is an integral and inherent part of prayer. Verses from the holy book are chanted aloud in a group by the faithful, in a practice which perhaps is unique to Kashmir. As these ancient walls of the Khanikas resound with the beauty and sanctity of this chanting, all in the vicinity feel at peace and one with their Creator.
One legend tells us that Losava Rinchen Zangpo was traveling across the length and breadth of Ladakh on a tough mission. Having come all the way from Spiti, he was in search for an ideal spot where temples in praise of the Enlightened One could be built. Temples which would be unique. But all he saw was wilderness, stark barren hills, valleys and dunes. Many a sunset did he see, as also he saw the moon rise, but still the perfect spot eluded him. A little perturbed, he sat deep in meditation. Inspired, he selected a spot and planted his wooden staff there, and took a vow that upon returning, if the staff would have taken root, burst into leaves, the temples would be built right there at Alchi. The staff did take root to become a lush tree, sacred till date. And true to his word, Rinchen Zangpo began work on the temple. Master craftsmen, artists and artisans were invited from other parts of India. They came, especially from central India, to this wilderness to create magic. In fact, the Choskor, or religious enclave at Alchi, is unique. The paintings and mural adorning its walls, however, are almost identical in style and spirit to those found in the Ajanta caves. The temples at Alchi are very nearly the sole survivors of pre-Tibetan style of Buddhist painting and art current in India at that time. Abandoned centuries ago as a place of regular worship, Alchi is still a sacred site maintained by the monks of Likir, a nearby monastery. There is a beautiful folk song also which describes how Alchi got its name. One legend tells us
क्योंकि दरिया सिंध के ऊपर कोई पुल नहीं थे, तो आलची तो पहला गांव था। तो यहाँ से हमारे राजा महाराजा जो उस वक़्त लोगों को ऐसे ही काम के लिए लाते थे, तो वो लोग को बिल्कुल ना सुना करते थे, इसलिए ना सुनाई को हम हाल चिंते बोलते हैं।
But that perhaps was true when able hands were required to build the temples a millennium ago. Today, the presence of the temples ensure that people from far and near come on their own to soak in the beauty of the temples and also that of Alchi. Perhaps divine and human creativity at its best.
Once upon a time, long, long ago, somewhere in a town called Akhnur, lived a potter named Tulla. His pots were known far and wide, not only for their fine mix of clay and water, but also because of the flowers on the pots that his daughter Sohni drew. Centuries have passed since Tulla made the pots and Sohni drew flowers on them. But here, in this region, their legend lives on. Mirza Sahiban, Sohni Mahiwal, Heer Ranjha, Sassi Punnu, all legendary lovers coincidentally lived and loved on the banks of the Chenab.
क्योंकि इस चनाब दे पानी दे विच ही इश्क है ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਖਿੱਚਦਾ ਸੀ.
But it was also in these very waters that Sohni Mahiwal's ill-fated romance met its star-crossed end. On the 9th day of the 9th month, as the last rays of the sun drowned in the waters of the Chenab, so did Sohni, with her half-baked pot, on her way to keep her tryst with Mahiwal. And side by side they were found the next day, together in death, if not in life. Who was this Sohni? What is it about her that centuries after her fiery love for Mahiwal consumed them both, she continues to inspire poets, artists, writers, and also ordinary folk? Balakram is a billboard painter in Akhnur, but whenever he has a moment to spare, he sketches his muse, Sohni. Perhaps it's her earthiness, for she is no mythical nymph, but a creature of her soil. The same soil where Sufism took roots and blossomed and mortal love became akin to worship of God. Here on the border between India and Pakistan in village Hamirpur,
जैसे बताते हैं लोग भाई सोनी महिवाल का मंदिर वहाँ दोनों की तस्वीर थी पत्थर की बनी हुई थी ये दरिया बह रहा इसके बीच मतलब बह गया वो.
But apparently, just across the river on the other side in Pakistan, there is a tree with a picture of Sohni etched on it. The Radcliffe line may have managed to divide their lands and their rivers, but could not divide their legends. Sohni lives, as does Mahiwal, on both sides of the Radcliffe line, in their songs, in their poems, and in their metaphors. In 1835, Whitney, an English traveller visiting Basoli, wrote about its slovenly bazaar, dilapidated ruins, and also of its heavenly paintings, in which it would seem the painters had the colours of dawn and the rainbow on their palette. Nothing much seems to have changed. The bazaar continues to look, well, slovenly. The ruins are home to a colony of bats, but do exude an aura of power and prosperity of a bygone era. And the paintings continue to enthrall. It was around 1640, during the reign of Raja Sangram Pal of Basoli, who incidentally was a favourite at Emperor Shah Jahan's court, that a distinct style of painting emerged. Its techniques were that of the Mughal school, but it had a spirit which was its very own. Unlike the Mughal miniatures, these paintings reflected the beauty of the artist's environment. The landscape of the Shivalik hills, their flora and fauna. They also derived inspiration from the eroticism of Shringar literature in Sanskrit and Hindi poetry. What really set them apart, however, was the bold use of primary colours which were made from stones found in the river and which came from flowers, trees and bushes all around the artist. Another unique feature was the distinctive shape of the eye, the Basoli eye. Primitive vigour, savage intensity were words used by the genteel set, familiar with the delicacy of Mughal miniatures, to describe the Basoli paintings initially. Nonetheless, by 1930s, their barbaric vigour had been recognised as the cradle of all four centres of hill painting and was making waves internationally. Unfortunately, in Basoli, the story was different.
उस वक्त मुझे याद है कि मेरे दादाजी ने अमृतसर से एक भाई व्यापारी आया था, वो 50-50 रुपए से पेंटिंग ले गया था.
Ved Ram Nivas Pada would know, as he is a direct descendant of the Rajveds of Basoli or the king's physicians who received these paintings as part of royal patronage. Today, his daughter Sonu, along with a few others like Shakil, are trying desperately to keep this art alive in Basoli so that the younger generation is aware of the legacy it has inherited.
ये आर्ट जो है ये वर्ल्ड फेमस है, अगर ये सिर्फ बुक्स में रह जाएगा अगर हम लोग नहीं करेंगे.
Unfortunately, her fears seem very real as Basoli slides further into obscurity and the savage intensity of Basoli paintings holds court elsewhere.
A game with no rules. Well, none which are apparently followed. A game where man and beast move together in perfect synchronization. A game which is definitely not for the swish-set or the faint-hearted. Welcome to a game of polo as it is played in Ladakh.
Ladakhi polo is rough and tough. There is no fall. You need ज़्यादा fall की तरफ danger की game सबसे as compared to down की polo की. यहाँ अगर danger crossing बहुत होते हैं. वहाँ तो dodge देके polo खींचते हैं. यहाँ तो dodge उस पे सीधे खींच के ले जाते हैं.
Although its origins are lost in obscurity, it is generally believed that it came in marriage with the Balti princess Gyal Khatun, bride of King Jamyang Namgyal. The fact is that polo for centuries has been a very popular sport in these rugged mountain valleys of the Himalayan and Karakoram ranges. In India, Ladakh in the north and Manipur in the east are the last two surviving bastions of polo in this very different avatar. There are no genteel chukkers or change of mounts midway here. The pace is furious, the game continuous, and the tempo maintained right till the end. Apart from the men and horses, music is the other indispensable must in a polo match in Ladakh. Surna, the flute, and Daman, the drum. As the excitement on the field increases, so do the beat of the Daman and the note of the Surna. The musicians ensure that the adrenaline continues to flow fast and faster still. Even now, a game of polo in the village ground or shagaran means that there are just two categories of people: those playing and those cheering. In fact, to be a part of the village team till recently was considered a matter of great pride. However, progress, development, globalization have taken their toll. Changing lifestyles and urbanization mean that the locals have little time or inclination for a game once considered the king of games and the game of kings.
कम से कम 15 टीम आता था वहाँ, अभी तो सिर्फ 2 टीम ही रह गया.
वो तो बहुत बुरा लग रहा है. यही सबसे नया, ये लद्दाख का यही फेमस गेम है. ये खत्म होते जा रहा है अब.
But for these men on their horses, others can choose to play whatever games they may wish. For them, there is only one game worth playing, and that is the one they play. On the national highway, as one drives from Srinagar to Jammu, suddenly the willow and poplar trees give way to cricket bats on both sides of the road. Bats of every size and make dot the landscape like mushrooms. For we are now in Halmula, where every family is involved in making cricket bats. The willow trees, which grow around them, provide the wood in abundance. So obviously then, the making and selling of cricket bats is everyone's business.
यहाँ तो सब तकरीबन सारे यही काम करते हैं। कम से कम 100-150 परिवार ये काम करते हैं इस इलाके में।
But it was not always like this. Halmula became the hub of the Indian bat industry by default. Just after partition, a sports good manufacturer of Jalandhar was deep in trouble. All his suppliers were suddenly across the border in Pakistan. He needed the willow for his products and fast. His search brought him to Halmula, the home of the willow, or Veer as it is known locally.
उस वक्त ये पानी सपोर्ट उसका एक मिस्त्री यहाँ आया था, फिर उन्होंने वहाँ से एक बेंडसा और ये एक डीजल इंजन लिया और साथ ही उन्होंने कारीगर भी वहाँ से साथ लिया जिन्होंने उसका फाउंडेशन यहाँ बनाया, सब कुछ किया था। तो पहले वहीं से मिस्त्री लाना पड़ता है, बैट बनाने के लिए भी, हैंडल बनाने के लिए भी, हर चीज़ के लिए भी वहीं से ही लाना पड़ता था। लड़के भर्ती हुई हैं, उन्होंने सीखा, फिर धीरे धीरे काम चालू हो गया।
A willow tree takes 15 years to mature, and the best quality wood is used for making bats. As the seasoned wood goes through various stages, its ultimate destination is to reach well-known hands across the world and create magic. It receives the final finishing touch with a flourish when the handle is fixed by hand on the bat. The handle is made from cane brought especially all the way from Kerala and the Andamans, as only that can provide the batsman the strength and flexibility to strike the ball hard. And thus, a truly national product for a national obsession is born.
वो केन केरला से आते हैं, ये तो लचक है इसमें।
Come the World Cup or an important series, and Halmula rejoices, as it means more business, more work.
दिल खुश हो जाता है, हमारे ये बैट इस्तेमाल हो जाता है, बिक्री भी बढ़ जाता है।
Free time, if any, is spent, well, obviously, doing what else but playing cricket.
For the matted, oily mass of a goat's underfleece, pasham, Pashmina or Kashmir has since time immemorial been much too much fussed over. It has inspired wars, been flaunted as a status symbol, and gifted with elan and received with pleasure. Even in the Vedas, the Ramayana and other ancient scriptures of India, one finds detailed references to it. Geographically, the story of Pasham begins in these high, lofty mountains. The Rig Veda describes ideal wool country as the Sindhu or Indus River basin and areas around the Iravati River or Ravi as we know it today. It also informs us that the sheep of the larger Gandhara region, known as Avi, are considered to provide the best wool. The legacy, perhaps, is intact. While the finest Pasham comes from Ladakh, some of the softest hand-woven shawls are made in Basoli, an obscure town on the banks of the Ravi near Jammu. Unknown to many, Pashmina shawls are still woven the old way here, since the shawls which are made in the Kashmir valley are the ones which are famous the world over. From the place of its origin, Pashmina has travelled far and wide right from the Indus Valley days. Through the Silk routes, the doshala, as it was known in Hindi, reached the Middle East where it was called a shal, only to become a shawl as it travelled further west and European royalty draped itself into its soft snugness. While its lure remained constant, techniques and designs continued to evolve and change, becoming more and more elaborate and intricate. Changing designs often reflected the political fortunes of the day. Even the king's whims and fancies, as these map shawls giving intricate details of the Dal Lake suggest. So popular were these shawls in the 18th century in Europe that British and French manufacturers began to produce machine-made imitations en masse. However, in India, traditionally, a single Pashmina shawl usually means the entire family has been involved at various stages of its production, which sometimes can take up to a year. Women, especially elder ones, card the pasham, making it ready for weaving, after which the male members weave and dye the shawls. Embroidery normally is done by both men and women. In this Pashmina story, just as the pasham continues to come from these snowy peaks and is transformed into beautiful shawls by these skilled hands, just so, woven or embroidered, the ambi or paisley, the leitmotif of India, continues to be one of the most popular designs which adorns these shawls. Some things surely don't change with time. Kashmir, historically, culturally, geographically, has always been India's melting pot. being at the crossroads, has created in its mountains and vales an exciting mosaic of crisscrossing influences, often sublime. But to savor the actual flavor of this intermingling of influences, you have to embark on a gastronomical journey. Travel to a little corner of downtown Srinagar known as Wazapura, the city of chefs. Every nook, corner and street of Wazapura exists to facilitate its residents' chief occupation, which is to cook. Or should it be said, to create elaborate feasts? For the Wazwan is no ordinary meal, but a culinary experience like no other. But this ultimate marriage of influences, recipes and ingredients from pan-Indian kitchens has often meant that many a wedding in real has had to be postponed because the family waza was overbooked and had no time to prepare the wedding feast. Wazwans are normally held to celebrate an occasion, and a lot of preparation goes into them. Once all the ingredients have been collected, the team of wazas get to work under the strict supervision of the head chef or Vasta Vaza. Mind-boggling amounts of mutton are chopped, sliced, pounded and ground to cook the traditional dishes such as rista, gushtaba, Rogan Josh, tabak mas. All these and other dishes are cooked on a wood fire in covered pots. The wazas pass on recipes which are often closely guarded family secrets from father to son. While the stamp of Mughal, Sikh, Dogra, Persian kitchens in cooking styles is apparent, the condiments and spices along with other ingredients come from practically all corners of India, including the southernmost, which give the Wazwan that unique, distinct flavor. For the Wazas, the taste of the pudding actually lies in its eating, as they see their guests relish every mouthful. But not for long, for it is the wedding season, and back in Wazapura, they have to begin preparation for the next Wazwan.
In these labyrinth lanes of downtown Srinagar, just a little away from Zena Kadal and Badshah's tomb, as the Jhelum flows almost without a ripple, a pair of hands is deftly at work in a workshop, which is more of an attic really. The last of 8 generations of craftsmen, Rahmanju is perhaps more of an artist. As he sits in his workshop, shaping blocks of wood and turning them into instruments capable of emitting sublime notes of music.
यूं ही लकड़ी का एक टुकड़ा इधर से उठाएंगे, वो क्या बेजान है उस वक्त, जब हम उसको जान देंगे, ज़बान देंगे, फिर ये बच जाएगा.
He makes almost all instruments, rababs, sitars, but it is the santoor which is his speciality. It is a string instrument and a direct descendant of the Ved veena, one of the oldest musical instruments to be found in India. As Rahman Ju gazes at the jailam from his window, he remembers the time his little workshop hummed with activity, a time when musical swaris, baithaks and Sufiana kalams were a part of everyday life.
हाँ होते थे. बैठक लगती थी इधर, वो बजाते हैं उधर, बैठते हैं, बुजुर्ग लोग सुनते हैं सूफियाना मौसीकी.
Then ill winds blew, changing everything forever. This centuries-old musical tradition was frowned upon and almost became taboo.
क्योंकि कुछ डिस्टर्बेंस भी हुई है, इसलिए वो साज अब चलते नहीं है.
Pandits who played and taught the santoor left the valley in terror, leaving behind a silence and a void.
बहुत आनंद से बैठते थे वो पंडित लोग. जब पंडित लोग यहाँ से चले गए, उनका शौक भी बैठ गया वो.
By the time normalcy returned, tastes had changed, perhaps forever.
उनमें आजकल के ज़माने में यही समझो, यही डांस शांस वगैरह ऐसा ही फिल्मी गाने आए, वो खूब खुश होते हैं.
But it is a matter of quiet pride for Rahman Ju that all famous exponents of this instrument play santoors which have been made by him, as they enthrall listeners at home and across the world.
जब कोई साज बजाता है ना, हमको मालूम होता है कि यह हमारा साज है. जब किसी और का साज होता है, वो तो मालूम पड़ जाए वो हमारा नहीं है.
For him, his work has never been just merely a means of livelihood, but
ऐसे लोगों को समझना चाहिए, ये इबादत ही है.
So he continues to sit in his little corner, single-handedly shaping blocks of wood into instruments capable of creating divine melody. Yes, that's lay for you. A mind-blowing array of sights, sounds and smells. Ayurvedic massages from Kerala, Rajasthani puppets, Ganesha serenely meditating alongside Tibetan mosques and Natarajas. Leh seems like a spiritual, cultural, aesthetic smorgasbord. But this awesome amalgamation, by the way, is nothing recent. For all its seeming inaccessibility through the centuries, Leh has been at the center of a complex network of trade routes. From Punjab to Central Asia, caravans carrying spices, tea and such other exotics took roughly 2 months to reach, traveling on these craggy mountainous roads. Buddhism also traveled the same way as did Islam. The rarefied air here, it would seem, has been perfect for a blending of influences, making Leh a halfway house for the world for centuries. In the labyrinth streets of its traditional bazaars, internet cafes rub shoulders with traditional crafts. Even as women from nearby villages sell fresh vegetables and fruits all in a row, while constantly spinning Pashmina yarn with their hands, as they have since eons. Except that the vegetables now reflect transnational tastes. Leh truly is as cosmopolitan as it can get, a place where people from everywhere feel at home and welcome. Perhaps nowhere else in the world will one find a Sikh gentleman run a German bakery, bake the most incredible pumpernickel, which is consumed by a dedicated clientele of expat Israelis. Even though Ladakh in general and Leh in particular defeat all metaphors, as members of the Ladakh theatre organization Leh rehearsed for an adapted Shakespeare play at the Shanti Stupa one evening, all barriers of language, culture, civilization disappeared. As the universality of human emotions took center stage, the result was magic. Sheer magic.